Okay. Um, Dude. Mm, I've been going to Yosemite since the 70s, almost every single year except during the pandemic. Um, I have quite a bit of knowledge about the park, about the Indian legends, about all of it. And oh my god, this is such bullshit. I can't even. Let's go through it.
When we think of the multitude of national parks in the United States, one name comes to mind before any others: Yosemite.
Yes.
Along with equally famous Yellowstone National Park, Yosemite represents some of the oldest protected land of the
Which, by the way, Yosemite was the first protected land, but Yellowstone was the first actual national park. These are different things, right? Because, like, national forests are also protected, but Yosemite was not the first national park. It does, however, contain two of the tallest waterfalls in the fucking world, okay?
United States, or anywhere on Earth, for that matter. And today, it is among the most popular destinations for tourists hoping to enjoy some of America's most diverse and expansive landscapes. Some visitors, however, get more than they bargained for. You see, a look into the history of Yosemite National Park highlights
Some. Yes, it's a national park. People do go missing, but it's an incredibly small percentage. It's probably less than 1% of the total tourists that actually visit this park.
not only how dangerous it can be, but how little we truly know about our own world.
Mm.
Out there, beyond the safe confines of our own cities and towns, the wilderness remains just as wild and weird as ever.
I have a feeling this dude has never been to Yosemite. He's never been to Yosemite, and he's acting like a fucking authority on this subject.
In 1864, President Abraham Lincoln signed a law preserving both California's Yosemite Valley and Mariposa Grove for future generations. This made Yosemite the first legally protected swathe of land on the planet. The park is dominated by Northern California's Sierra Nevada mountain range, boasting some of the largest, tallest, and most impressive granite monoliths in existence. Around their bases,
You don't want to mention the fact that they have two of the tallest waterfalls in the world? You don't want to fucking mention that. Ribbon Falls and Yosemite Falls are two of the top four tallest waterfalls in the world, but okay, don't drop that.
it's a rugged frontier replete with waterfalls and forests and a robust, active ecosystem of flora and fauna, including massive
Mm.
sequoia trees. If the stories are to be believed, however, other things might hide in the shadow of peaks like El Capitan. Over the years,
What?
tales have emerged of truly miraculous.
Oh, wait, wait, wait. You don't want to mention that El Capitan, which you're mispronouncing, is the largest rock in the world. Seriously, dude.
Even unbelievable things unfolding right here in the national parks. And Yosemite is no exception.
Mm.
Yosemite National Park consistently attracts enormous crowds. In fact, the largest year on record was 2016, which saw more than 5 million visitors passing through its gates.
Mm.
Even during the pandemic of 2020, when park attendance dropped dramatically, Yosemite still managed to welcome two.
That's because they actually closed the gates. During when we went into the pandemic, they shut down. The only people that were allowed to be in Yosemite initially in 2020 was the staff. That was it. And after that, I think they opened it up to very limited reservations because we were in the pandemic. But I remember reading stories about how the the rangers, the staff that were there, were remarking on how the wildlife was really coming back and really taking over the valley again because there was less people, right?
0.27 million tourists alone. And with so many people coming and going, accidents are bound to happen. Most are mundane and completely predictable, but mountain climbers fall, hikers sprain ankles, and wildlife behave predictably enough when defending themselves from overly curious tourists. Yet, amid these foreseeable incidents, a few tragedies do stand out as more peculiar than the rest. Among these are a handful of disappearances which seem to suggest something sinister might be unfolding at Yosemite. One of the most perplexing incidents involved young Stacy Arris, who was attending Yosemite National Park with her father and 6 others in July of 1981. Stacy, who was 14 years old, arrived with her party at the Sunrise High Sierra Camp on July 25th and was eager to refresh herself on an afternoon.
So these High Sierra camps, you either have to you have to get a reservation, but you either hike in or you take a mule ride. It's usually a mule ride to get to the High Sierra camps, and they have not only the mules that are bringing you in, but they also have the mules that are bringing all the supplies to the campsite. And these are High Sierra backcountry areas of Yosemite. So this is not the valley that we're talking about. Like he spent a lot of time talking about the valley. But this is probably closer to like Tuolumne Meadows and Tuolumne Lake and like all that area.
Hike along one of the many nearby trails. See, she changed her clothes and grabbed her camera and asked her father if he cared to join her. He declined the offer, saying he was exhausted from the hike up the mountain, so she set off on her own. But little did he know, this would be the very last time he saw his daughter. There wasn't really any reason to be concerned. Stacy was not only experienced, but the weather was quite pleasant. The route she told her father she would take was simple and short. Only a mile and a half over terrain so forgiving that she didn't even bother wearing her hiking boots. Instead, she padded off in her flip-flops, setting off in the direction.
So we would call that an easy trail. There's 3 ratings for trails. There's easy, there's moderate, and there's strenuous. I don't know why these people who are covering these Yosemite and other hiking situations are not using the actual terminology, but it's easy, moderate, or strenuous. That's what you call trails. So if it's an easy trail, yeah, she could probably do it in flip-flops.
Of a boulder not 100 feet distant, near the cabin where an elderly man named Gerald Stewart was sitting. Now, once she reached the location, Stacy talked a bit with Stewart, and the two sharing pleasant observations while she snapped some simple photographs. She informed Stewart of her plans, and in the affable spirit of any outdoorsman, Stewart offered to accompany her on the short trek down to a nearby lake. Other people staying in the cabins reported that they had actually watched as the pair set off onto the trail. However, it wasn't long until Stewart, who was in his 70s, needed to take a break. I mean, he wasn't as physically up-to-date as Stacy, to put it lightly. Stacy agreed and said that she was going to go on a walk just a little further ahead. So just to go ahead and get the lay of the land. I would only be back in a minute. At this point, they were still within eyesight of the cabins, so everything should be fine, right? And both Stewart and more distant witnesses said they watched Stacy disappear behind some trees. And that was it. Stewart waited, listening to the sounds of the forest as the minutes started to drag on. Why hadn't his companion returned? With concern but little alarm, perhaps she had been sidetracked by an irresistible photo opportunity. Stewart checked a little further ahead before enlisting others to help him find the girl. It was to no avail. Several passes along the short trail failed to yield any sign of Stacy, save for the lens cap of her own camera. After searching for an hour, the campers started to alert the authorities, who launched a massive search and rescue effort. All told,
Well, Stewart sounds like the most likely suspect if he's the last person who saw her. I mean, I camped in Yosemite for 40 goddamn years. And all of these bullshit Sasquatch stories and UFO stories. I was there for 40 fucking years. Every year we went there for a week. I just don't believe this bullshit. It's so weird to me that you guys have these weird ass stories.
150 people became involved, including nearly 70 Mountain Rescue Association volunteers. Dogs and helicopters were deployed, but it was too late. Nothing was found, then or since. No blood, no clothing, no belongings. Stacy had seemingly vanished into thin air. This was not the last time the Yosemite wilderness would swallow an unsuspecting victim without a trace. In fact, nearly 20 years later, Ruth Ann Rupert would tell medical professionals at a doctor's appointment on August 14th, 2000, that she was going to spend the afternoon hiking Yosemite Falls. It was only going to be a short excursion, and she seemed to be in good spirits. However, Rupert was never seen again. Another immense search party was mustered, but no sign of her.
Dude, people fall off that trail all the time. I've literally hiked that trail. Come on, man. It's so fucking steep. People fall off that trail all the time. I've seen helicopters floating around Yosemite Falls because that trail is really steep and very narrow. Come on.
Found until 2008, when her backpack surfaced in an area known as the Fireplace Creek Drainage, an area searchers had scoured every inch of 8 years prior, but nothing had ever turned up. Now, in 2005, seasoned hiker Michael Allen Fissery outlined a plan for his hike along Yosemite's Hetch Hetchy Reservoir. Leave the reservoir for Rancheria Falls, then to Tilto Mountain and Lake Vernon until returning to where he initially started. Yet, for reasons unknown to anybody, Fissery apparently deviated from his plan, and when the 51-year-old hiker failed to return 4 days later, authorities then leapt into action. Like Rupert, all that was recovered was his backpack, found just below the snow line along the trail near Tilto Mountain. A similar fate befell George Penka on June 17, 2011. The then 30-year-old man was on an 80-person church excursion when he vanished from his smaller subgroup of around 20 people. The accounts of exactly where and when this took place are contradictory at best, but it occurred in the vicinity of Upper Yosemite Falls, and to this day, not one shred of evidence has been found related to his disappearance. You see, only 7 years later, Max Schweitzer, a middle-aged government employee, parked his car at Yosemite's Camp 4, apparently walked off into oblivion, and his last known whereabouts...
He's not even telling you what Camp 4 is. Come on. Camp 4 is a walk-in campsite. You don't have to have any reservations, but it's basically where all the rock climbers camp, and it's like group camping. You have to share the campsite with other people, so that already creates a dangerous situation because you don't know who you're camping next to, and you're sharing the same campsite with other people. But it's also, by the way, one of the only locations in the valley that was not moved, because they came up with a new plan to make sure that there were no structures, nothing going on within 100 feet of the walls, the granite walls, because there's constant rock falls. And so it's dangerous. Camp 4 is the only, I think it's that, and the Sierra Club headquarters are the only two areas that were not moved away from the walls. So this particular campsite is somewhere where you show up early in the morning and you're like, hey, do you got space for me? And then you can camp there. There's one other campsite like that that's over by North Pines, that is intended for the people who are hiking in like Little Yosemite Valley to climb Half Dome or Tenai Canyon.
Place him hiking somewhere in the park wearing shorts, a sweatshirt, and a dark backpack. While there is some speculation that Schweitzer's disappearance was deliberate, as he had several run-ins with law enforcement, his ability to vanish from the face of the earth in today's modern era, where all of our movements are somehow tracked and traced and databased, remains shocking. So, why does Yosemite National Park refuse to relinquish these individuals? Some believe these disappearances and other supernatural happenings, well, we'll get into in a moment, actually stem from an old curse placed upon the land by Chief Tenaya of the Ahwahneechee. Early settlers to the Yosemite Valley came to resent the area's original inhabitants because, in their eyes, they were poaching off the land they had claimed. Eventually, the settlers resolved to forcibly remove the Ahwahneechee from the valley in the 1850s. And
wait, why did you say it correctly the first time and incorrectly the second time? It's Ahwahneechee. It's the Ahwahneechee tribe. Like, seriously, like, how did you fuck it up? Did you fuck it up the second time?
Organized a posse led by Captain John Bowling to confront the tribe. Chief Tenaya and his people stood their ground, giving way to a bloody clash between them and the settlers. The son of the chief died in the ensuing battle, and according to legend, Tenaya looked one of the colonizers in the eye and shouted a curse that should he be struck down like his son, the chief would haunt them in death. He would, in his words, not leave my home, but be with the spirits among the rocks, the waterfalls, in the rivers, and in the wind. Wheresoever you go, I will be with you. You will not see me, but you will feel the spirit of the old chief and grow cold. History departs from legend here, as there is some indication Tenaya died elsewhere, perhaps at the hands of another tribe, maybe. In any case, the curse seems to have taken root.
Basically, the U.S. government came in and cleaned out the entire valley and forced them out. They forced him out. So he probably died somewhere in the foothills. Come on, man.
Whether through actual magic or simply the power of belief. Since then, the site of the conflict has seen an inordinate number of accidents, disappearances, and strange sightings, a phenomenon which has blossomed out to encompass the greater Yosemite area. Today, some even call Tenaya Canyon the Bermuda Triangle of Yosemite. Even the official park trail guide map.
Come on. Dude. Tenaya Canyon is just incredibly densely forested, and it's got a lot of rattlesnakes. It's like the most populated rattlesnake area of the park. It's difficult terrain. It's not really maintained. So the only hikers that go back there are pretty fucking serious, because there's also a lot of rock falls and stuff. Like, there was a huge ass rock fall from Half Dome that basically blocked off the trail in the aughts, right near Mirror Lake, which Mirror Lake wasn't even a real lake. It wasn't even a real lake. Come on, like, seriously, like, they used to go in there and, like, with bulldozers and try and, like, make it a lake so that they had a recreational area in the park, and then they decided to let it go back to nature. There was a point in the 80s when they actually changed the signage and called it Mirror Meadow. And then we had the El Nino of 96, 97 that turned it back into a small pond, basically. It's not even a lake. It's like a fucking pond.
There is a warning. Hiking in Tenaya Canyon is dangerous and strongly discouraged. What happened to Stacy Aris, Ruth Ann Rupert, and the dozens of others who vanished into Yosemite without a trace? Where are they? Were they claimed by an ancient curse, or did something else take them? Something perhaps from the stars? On July 7th, 1985, a man and his 6-year-old son were enjoying their final night of camping in one of Yosemite National Park's many forested areas. It was roughly 11:30 p.m., and the father had decided to turn in for the night, snoring soundly in his tent while the boy enjoyed one last snack right before bed. The quiet of the evening was broken by an odd sound. Unlike any animal the boy had ever heard, it sounded like a strange buzzing or a humming noise. The boy, either brave or foolhardy, but above all curious, set out to find the source of the sound, a flashlight in his hand. After searching for about 25 minutes, he found himself atop a small hill from which he could see the surrounding countryside. And to his amazement, something big, perhaps 40 feet wide and 60 feet long, sat on the dried grass. It was egg-shaped, like a craft of some sort, about 40 feet away. It seemed to be the source of the humming. As the boy watched...
I'm sorry. It is impossible for there to be only one witness of an event like this, when this is the most populated national park in the goddamn country. Okay? I don't know where these stories are coming from, because that's impossible. Do you understand how populated that park is? Like, how many people are camping there every year? You've obviously never been there before, if you think that it's possible that only one person is a witness to an event like this.
He noticed the light streaming from what appeared to be windows in an open doorway, splashing hues of various colors across the darkened earth. The entire area around the landed craft seemed mired in a yellow fog or mist, thick, but not opaque enough to obscure a trio of short beings with gray skin, enormous eyes, and oversized heads. Each stood around 3 feet tall and seemed preoccupied with a dead ox or cow on the ground. To the boy's horror...
Ox? Cow? They don't have fucking cattle in Yosemite, dude. They don't have those types of animals in Yosemite. I can't even, man. Local farmers are not allowed to, like, herd their cattle and their oxen and shit into the national park. What are you even talking about? This is impossible. There's no way those types of animals were in the park.
One of these humanoids procured a shiny silver sphere. The ball left the being's hand and glided towards the animal's corpse, releasing a red laser beam that began slicing into the animal's flesh. It was too terrible to watch, and the boy scrambled to leave. As he did so, he dislodged some rocks, now drawing attention of the creatures. They turned in his direction, locking eyes with the child. He would later say it felt as if they were looking straight into his very soul. The boy broke eye contact, fleeing off into the darkness, eventually finding refuge in a hollowed-out tree trunk. According to the entry from the National UFO Reporting Center, hikers and family members eventually found the boy. Still cowering inside his makeshift shelter, he was visibly shaken, but okay. And once he calmed down, relayed this fantastic story. Did the witness stumble upon a cattle mutilation in progress? It would seem so, but unfortunately, little further investigation was conducted. If his tale is true, were these the same beings another camper saw in Yosemite in November of 1999? This hiker was alone, sleeping soundly in his tent when several presences, each 4.5 feet tall, manifested in his tent. They communicated with him telepathically, imbuing the entire experience with a peculiar, unnatural sense of calm. The witness claimed that these beings did not perform any intrusive surgery on him, but instead expressed concern about humankind's stewardship of the environment. According to his report, his next memory was of regaining consciousness at his campsite without any further incident.
I'm sorry, I don't buy this at all.
Perhaps something more recognizably terrestrial lurks in this corner of the California wilderness. Like practically every other national park in America, Yosemite produces its share of Bigfoot sightings, which comes as little surprise given its location is one of the most prolific states for such reports. Hikers regularly hear strange vocalizations attributed to the cryptid echoing through the mountains. And
You know what's interesting is that, like I said, I've been camping at Yosemite since the 70s. And the first time I ever heard any of these Sasquatch stories was this year when I started following channels like this. Like, considering that I had been talking to rangers, talking to locals, talking to other campers for decades, and I had never heard any of these stories before, but all of a sudden now I'm finding them online, is very bizarre to me. Because, like I said, I've been camping there since the 70s, and I just find this stuff bullshit.
one instance, from autumn of 1976, visitors were camping near Tenaya Lake, named after the same chief who allegedly cursed Yosemite all those years ago. And that's when they hear this low, loud scream right around 10 p.m. that actually ascended in pitch to a high wail. The witness had heard mountain lions before, but this did not resemble their cries at all. The possibility that they may have heard a Bigfoot is then reinforced by the disgusting smell they noticed at the same time, likened to a dirty dog and the sound of something running past their tent at a very high rate of speed on two legs. Others have seen the actual creature close up, too close for comfort, in fact. In November of 1978, Robert Richardson had set up camp alone in Iron Meadow, about 2,000 feet below Iron Lake.
Peppa Pig sing-along party.
For comfort, in fact. In November of 1978, Robert Richardson had set up camp alone in Iron Meadow, about 2,000 feet below Iron Lakes, but above Yosemite's Fresno Dome. In the dim light of his campfire, he saw something immense approaching in complete silence. It stood 8 feet tall and looked almost like a gigantic man. The orange glow of the firelight eventually revealed more details: broad shoulders, a thick neck, and a black, bearded face that housed a pair of deep-set-in eyes and a wide nose with flaring nostrils. Richardson and the Bigfoot locked eyes for a few nerve-wracking moments before he reached for his gun, taking eyes off the beast for only a moment. When he looked back,
You're not allowed to carry any firearms in national parks. So I don't know why all y'all keep telling me stories about people having guns in the national parks. You are not allowed to carry firearms in national parks unless you are a ranger.
the creature was gone. Though he hadn't heard anything, nor did he find any evidence the following morning, Richardson seems to feel there was something unnatural about the encounter. His report noted the rich history of the Iron Meadow area, which, according to him, has yielded an abundance of Native American artifacts. Is there a correlation there? Anyone living in northwestern California on their way home from vacation might find their most direct route taking them through Yosemite National Park, especially if their journey takes them along Highway 120. Such was the case for one family on their way back from Nevada early one morning in the summer of 1998. Around 2 a.m., a family near Tioga Pass were startled to catch a bipedal shape in their headlights. It was covered in silvery black fur, perched on a rock by the roadside. With a careful but deliberate movement, the Bigfoot raised its body from a crouching posture to stretch fully upright. It seemed to stand just under 6 feet tall and had a very thin build. The witnesses said it seemed as if the creature had been looking at something in the road before the headlights caught its attention. As their car passed by, its head turned to watch them. None of the passengers seemed in a hurry to turn around and to try and find it. Could you blame them, right? That fall, 2 hunters in the early morning hours were scouting for deer along Yosemite National Park's border when they noticed what they thought at first was a man wearing all black, slogging up a nearby ridge. The figure had no equipment, no light, no gun, nothing, but instead began digging in the brush for about a half an hour. The hunters thought this peculiar. Not only was the figure's behavior erratic, but they had been camped out here for 11 days and had seen no indication that anybody else here was in the area. As the sun began to rise after 6 a.m., the thing set off in the hunters' direction. It wasn't long until they realized what they were watching wasn't a man. By the time it had closed to 50 yards, they could see it was shaped like a person, but was covered in thick, jet black, shiny hair, and had red rings around its eyes. Hoping to get a better look, one of the hunters quietly grabbed his rifle from the truck, and taking advantage of the fact they had not been spotted yet, he pulls up the scope, but as he did, this thing darts behind a tree and never emerged. After a while, the hunters tried to find where the creature had gone, but could not discern any suitable hiding place. It was as if it had simply just stepped behind the tree and out of existence.
It was probably a black bear. What? Why is there such a huge pause? What the hell? Oh, did I not do it? Oh, sorry, my bad.
The sightings are one thing, but what do we have of evidence regarding Bigfoot in Yosemite? While plenty of eyewitness sightings might involve the collection of hair or even plaster cast of footprints, there is some indication that a group of miners may have stumbled long ago upon the holy grail of cryptozoology, a Bigfoot body, or at least the mummified remains of a gigantic human. It was 1885, and a group of men were actually seeking fortune and fame near Yosemite's Valley, Bridal Veil Falls. There was gold in them hills, and silver too, they believed, but their efforts had turned up little in the way of encouragement.
It's Bridal Veil Fall because it's a single drop. You only call it falls if there's like multiple drops to it, like Staircase Falls, which is over by Curry Village. Yosemite Falls, which has an upper and lower section to it. But if it's a single drop, it's just fall. Okay? It's Bridal Veil Fall.
It was on his lunch break that Mr. G.F. Martindale noticed a curious pile of rubble along the wall of a nearby cliff. Martindale, who was supervising the other miners, immediately recognized the pile as the work of human hands, and would set his men to work to removing the stones. If the story is to be believed, the miners removed the debris in short order, revealing a fissure in the rock that had been sealed up by a stone wall. All present marveled at the skill involved, which consisted of layered rock, each an eighth of an inch thick. In fact, one miner declared it as pretty as any wall on that building that I have ever seen. Curiosity turned to greed, and had they stumbled upon a workable mine, or better yet, some overlooked buried treasure, without a moment's hesitation, the mining party set to work disassembling the wall and had soon opened up enough to peer inside. The faint light from their lanterns barely revealed anything, save that there was indeed a space within. Once the rest of the stones were removed, their greed in turn fell to disappointment. There was no treasure here. Another adjacent chamber was explored, but the only thing worth noting was a long shape perched atop a stone shelf built into the rock. It wasn't the riches they had hoped for, but if the miners had any foresight, they might have grasped the magnitude of what truly lay before them. The shape was actually an immense mummy, around 6'8" tall, and seemed to be swaddled in animal skins, covered in a fine sheen of light gray powder.
There is nothing like that near Bridal Veil Fall. There's nothing like that in the valley at all. The valley's only 10 miles long. There are no structures like that. What are you even talking about? This is a completely made up fucking story. The closest settlement to Bridal Veil Fall it's gone now, but you can still see the foundations of it along the Merced River. But I can't even with you. Like, where did you even pick up this shit? This is so made up. This is impossible. I know what that area looks like. There's nothing like that there.
Powder. Unfolding the wrappings, the miners were able to discern that the remains were female and that she was clutching a child's body to her chest. His miners may have been disappointed, but Martindale apparently realized that the specimen needed to be preserved, so he had them dutifully package the corpse and ship it off to Los Angeles. There, it was allegedly examined by unnamed scientists who claimed that the individual must have stood over 7 feet when alive and was substantially ancient, predating even the local Awenatchee themselves. What happened to this priceless discovery remains uncertain. As with similar giant remains, allegedly unearthed from other indigenous American sites, it has been long lost to history, or perhaps molders in some dusty corner of the Smithsonian's Institute's collection. The only additional insight we can glean from the story comes from late Bigfoot researcher Bobby Short, who claimed that similar giants fill the legends of the Awenatchee people. In one such tale, a giant named Ulelen descended into the Yosemite Valley long before white settlers, bringing with him a posse of other giants who engaged in open warfare with the tribe. Like other cannibalistic giants in indigenous American lore, Ulelen and his band of monsters delighted in abducting the Awenatchee, taking them back to their lair at the base of Cascade Falls. Interestingly, there is a correlation here. In Northern California, many of the natives there refer to similar upright bipedal creatures that would come in their villages in the middle of the night, stealing their children and women away to cannibalize on them, were referred to as mountain devils. While down here in Cascade Falls, they would strip them into pieces, dry them like jerky, and feast upon their flesh. Eventually, the Awenatchee grew tired of this predation and eradicated the giants. Was the giant specimen recovered at Bridal Veil Falls one of Ulelen's kin? Bobby Short provided some intriguing insight to her own retelling of the Yosemite giant story. According to her, the Awenatchee left behind detailed descriptions of their burial rites. These included wrapping their dead in animal skins just prior to cremation. In 1990, she wrote this: "If you recall,
Okay, sorry, my bad.
AG1 is so much more than a greens powder. In one single scoop, it delivers daily multivitamins, pre and probiotics.
Their burial rites. These included wrapping their dead in animal skins just prior to cremation. In 1990, she wrote this: "If you recall, the mummy of the Yosemite Valley was wrapped in the skins of animals and covered with a fine gray powder. Ashes, perhaps. Today, Bridal Veil Falls retains a haunted reputation. Some visitors describe hearing odd voices at nighttime, barely audible underneath the roaring thunder of the waterfall. Awenatchee legend holds the area is home to Pohono, a malicious spirit with a reputation for luring careless individuals over the falls to their doom. Pohono manifests in the midst of the cascading waters as a shimmering phantom beckoning travelers ever closer to the edge, until a misstep or a sudden gust of wind ushers them over the edge. Pohono is at least occasionally successful in this endeavor to the present day, as deaths from falling still occur around Bridal Veil Falls. We are left to wonder if the giant mummy of Yosemite Valley is somehow responsible or related."
Oh my God, with you, even. I'm totally gonna unsubscribe after this. This is such an irresponsible and bullshit story. The reason people die around Bridal Veil Fall is because they do rock climbing stuff. Like, there's one story. I'll pull it up. I'll pull it up. There's this. Well, no, I'm not gonna read the whole goddamn thing. There is a story about a guy who was trying to figure out some way to like bungee jump around that area, and his cord snapped. That was one of the big deaths that happened around Bridal Veil Fall. It's fall. If it's a continuous single drop, it's a fall. I can't even with this guy. He's acting like an authority on this subject, and he's just giving you a bunch of bullshit. There are no such structures near that fall. Can't even. Dude, it's also, by the way, an easy hike. It's short. There's a parking lot right next to it. If you're gonna make up some bullshit ghost story for Yosemite, why don't you talk about the wagon trail that's coming up off of Bridal Veil Fall? Why don't you talk about like some of the old timey shit? You could make up anything you want about Yosemite because it is a vast park, right? And there are old wagon trails that are no longer maintained because they built roads, right? They drilled a huge ass tunnel into the mountains so that they could have a road where cars could travel into the valley. But there formerly used to be a very steep wagon trail that basically started right around Bridal Veil Fall. Like, there are so many ghost stories you could fucking make up that would make more sense than the bullshit you're trying to tell us right now.
Related somewhat to the tales of Pohono. And Bridal Veil Falls isn't the only landmark that is allegedly haunted. To the list of other strange phenomena in Yosemite National Park, we can add the ghost of Grouse Lake. This spirit first occurred in the historical record circa 1857 in the writings of Galen Clark, who would become Yosemite's first park ranger 10 years after. Clark was surveying Grouse Lake's shoreline when he heard something absolutely uncanny emanating from the waves. It sounded to him like a lost or frightened puppy. When he brought the story to his indigenous colleagues, they informed him that such sounds were commonplace in the vicinity of the lake. They then explained the ghost of Grouse Lake was not a dog. However, it was the spirit of a native...
I'm sorry, his indigenous colleagues? At the time that Galen Clark was living in the valley, it had been settled. That's when Camp Curry was set up. They started growing, they had an apple orchard. They were literally settling the valley at this point because Galen Clark blew up the moraine so that the valley would dry out. It wouldn't be as swampy and they could start building houses and businesses. Oh my God, even with this story.
American boy who had met his end in its frigid waters. Their people made it a point to avoid the body of water entirely, for they believed that anybody on its shores who heard the boy and investigated would meet the same fate. The specter dragging its victims by the legs to the bottom of the lake until they drowned. Paranormal author Brent Swancer related another harrowing story from Yosemite National Park. This one, more recent. 26-year-old camper Christopher Thompson claimed that, after setting up his tent, he went in search of some firewood in the nearby forest, only to find an old man waiting beside his tent when he had returned. The man appeared to be Native American and wore around his neck a curious bell or charm which seemed to ring whenever he would move. The man explained to Thompson that he was lost. Would he be willing to give him a lift to the nearest road? Thompson was perplexed, but by no means frightened by this visitor. But at the same time, night was fast approaching, so to him, the most prudent course of action was to not only take him to the road, but all the way to the nearest ranger's office. The man agreed, and the two walked to Thompson's truck. Instead of hopping in the passenger seat, the old man opened the rear door. When Thompson offered the passenger seat to his new friend, the old man declined and insisted on sitting in the back. The two set off down the road, and as the sun sank down below the trees and darkness crept over the forest, Thompson heard something. It was quiet at first, but he was able to discern bits and pieces. It sounded like some unidentifiable language, and it was coming from the back seat. Thompson spared a glance in his rearview mirror and saw the old man rocking gently back and forth, muttering to himself. Alarmed but with no desire to be rude, he rushed to the ranger's office as quickly as he could. Somewhere along the way, the man had vanished. At a complete loss for what to do, Thompson then reported the entire affair to the Rangers, who didn't seem to be able to offer much in the way of an explanation or offer any help. There is an unsettling coda to Thompson's tale. He would later discover something in his back seat, apparently left behind by the old man. It seemed to be a small pouch made of animal hide and held a curious array of stones and herbs inside. Thompson claimed that Yosemite Valley locals told him the object was cursed and that he might be as well. Since then, Thompson struggles with nightmares, perhaps even sleep paralysis. Each time he dreams that he cannot move, the only thing he can hear is the strange chanting and mumbling.
I don't know where you're coming up with these stories, because I was going there for 40 fucking years, dude. And the type of stories they talk about is like Basket Dome, the princess whose face is on all sides of Half Dome. The fact that when there was going to be a rock slide that revealed a buffalo, that meant something. I can't remember what it meant, but like there was a rock slide and there does look like there's an image of a buffalo. It's kind of below Glacier Point. But I mean, like there's some very traditional Indian legends in the valley. They've got a rough history of the fact that the U.S. government came in and cleared the Indians out of their valley. But this shit, I mean, I don't know how I could possibly be vacationing there every single year for like 40 fucking years. And I have never heard of Sasquatches and hidden buildings by fucking Bridal Veil Fall. Like, this is some bullshit, dude. And you're not even getting the pronunciations correct on this shit.
In his ears.
All right.
It seems that Yosemite is haunted both outdoors and indoors. The park features a few hotels where, if the stories are true, some guests simply refuse to check out, lingering long after they have left our mortal world. The oldest of these, the Sierra Sky Ranch, constructed in 1877 as a rehabilitation center for tuberculosis victims. Within the confines of this sanitarium, the afflicted could find some respite in the crisp mountain air, quarantined from the rest of society.
Okay, that is not in the park. I don't know where it is. I've never fucking heard of it before, but that is most certainly not a lodging in Yosemite National Park. There's the Ahwahnee Hotel, there's the Yosemite Lodge, there's Camp Curry, there's Housekeeping Camp, and there's the campgrounds, and that's all in the valley, right? There is like something in the White Wolf area, and there but I've never heard of that. There's the Wawona Hotel that's on the way down to the Mariposa Grove, and I think they might have some stuff up in Tuolumne Meadows, but I have never heard of there is no fucking way. What you're talking about is fucking impossible. Okay? It's not in the park. Period. The Ahwahnee Hotel, during one of the wars, I think it was probably the Civil War, was turned into a military hospital. Because during the Civil War, the Buffalo Soldiers came in. You were so goddamn uneducated about Yosemite history that like the shit that's coming out of your mouth just doesn't even make fucking sense.
Years, however, Carrot Sierra Sky Ranch began to degrade, leaving many of the patients to suffer in less than sanitary living conditions. Eventually, the property was converted to housing for World War I veterans, then a lodge, a function it still serves today. Guests to Sierra Sky Ranch report a variety of unexplainable events, Among the most common apparitions are an angry gentleman who knocks over patio furniture as he prowls the veranda of the hotel, an invisible, amorous presence that kisses both bartenders and their customers on the cheek with unseen lips, and a woman reeking of perfume who haunts the hotel's library and main house. The children can be heard snickering, speaking in hushed tones, and running up and down Sierra Sky Ranch's many halls and stairways. Whenever they are seen, these ghost children tend to congregate in the common areas like the main living room and the media room. In addition to simply being seen and heard, the spirits have a reputation for generating a litany of poltergeist phenomena. They tug on guests' clothing, slam doors shut, and turn anything with a switch on or off, from faucets to appliances to lights. While younger, the Ahwahnee Hotel may even be more haunted than Sierra Sky Ranch. Named for the Yosemite Valley's original inhabitants, this majestic structure was completed in 1927 and boasts 97 hotel rooms, suites, and parlors stretching across 150,000 square feet alone. Y-shaped layout, it sits only a short distance from one of Yosemite National Park's most famous landmarks, the imposing granite crest of Half Dome. Even if you have never been to the hotel, you probably have a good idea of what its incredible interior looks like. When designing the interior sets of the fictional Overlook Hotel for his 1980 horror masterpiece, The Shining, film director and horror master Stanley Kubrick drew upon the Ahwahnee for inspiration. While vast, the interior of the Ahwahnee Hotel is rendered cozy by all the trappings we've come.
Dude, he literally picked a massive hotel in Colorado. He what are you even talking about? I can't, dude. Oh my God. Plus, I'm fairly certain it was maybe they like redesigned it or something. But I'm fairly certain it's been around for a lot longer than 1927. Because it was a hospital at one point. It was like a
to expect from a rustic national park lodge. Massive fireplaces, luxurious animal furs, comfy leather sofas, and a warm yellow light spilling from dozens of chandeliers above. But don't be lulled into a false sense of security by these creature comforts. When you are a guest in the Ahwahnee Hotel, you are never alone. If you guys enjoyed today's episode on the mysteries surrounding Yosemite National Park, go ahead and hit that like button, leave a comment down below, let me know what you'd like to see next, or maybe what are your favorite.
No, I'm out. Look, for anybody who wants to go to Yosemite, the Ahwahnee Hotel is fucking rad. Okay? It's got giant vaulted ceilings, huge fireplaces. It has this beautiful dining room where you can, if you're kind of on a lower budget, you can go for lunch, right? But the dining room, if you sit towards the back of it, has a view of Yosemite Falls. If you decide that you just want to get drinks on the patio, and like maybe get a cheese platter, or like some sort of like bar food, they have really fucking cool food. You can sit on the patio and look up at Half Dome, and there's this big wide open lawn, and deer come in. And then it's very expensive. It's the most expensive hotel in the park. You can, there are bungalows that are kind of tucked in the forest right next to it, or you can get rooms in the actual hotel, but they're very, very expensive rooms. I have never stayed there because it's very expensive, but, I go there every single time I go to visit in Yosemite. I go to that hotel. I have never, not once, in 40 fucking years, heard that it was haunted, and I don't think that he really said that anything is actually happening at that hotel, right? He did not actually say that anything's happening at that hotel. It's a beautiful hotel. It's gorgeous, and they have lovely gift shop with Indian like art and stuff. It's a gorgeous hotel. It's very expensive. I don't know what this dude is doing, but it seems like he doesn't know what the hell is going on in Yosemite, and he's just making a bunch of bullshit up. And so I have unsubscribed. I'm out. I'm done with this dude's channel because he's clearly just making shit up.